On April 17th, 1993, a young girl in a blue polka dot dress was called to the Torah in Little Rock, Arkansas, to read from Parashat Shmini, this week's Torah portion. And from that moment on, she knew she wanted to be a rabbi. Actually, that's not true. I was called to the Torah as a bat mitzvah 15 years ago on this weekend to read from this week's Torah portion, but in no way did I anticipate that I would be standing before you tonight as a rabbi. I did know that I was engaging in something essentially good and connective, something that would be part of my life forever. Certainly, that has proven to be true, and I hope all of the young people who are here tonight, as you look back on your bar bat mitzvah, a year or 2 years or 4 or 5 years ago, can relate to that. As confusing as my Torah portion is, and I feel sure that our students, Marcus Cohn and Mason Gronauer, and this year's graduate, Chloe McKessie, would agree with me on that because they actually had the same Torah portion that I had. I have found it surprisingly resonant this week, the messages inside this Torah portion, in the midst of this conversation that we're having as a nation about Facebook and other technologies that so influence our lives. In Shmini, the priests who lead the community having just been ordained, offer sacrifices to God. And the first of the priest sacrifices please God, they're accepted. But then 2 of Aaron's sons, Nadav and Avihu, come forward and offer their sacrifices. The Torah calls their offering Eish Zarah, a strange fire. And instead of receiving this offering like all the others, God consumes these 2 men, and they die on the spot. What was this strange fire, and why did it cause Nadav and Avihu to be consumed? The commentators of our Torah struggle to put this horrible incident into some sort of framework that makes sense. Maybe Nadav and Abihu were arrogant, or maybe they were irresponsible with their responsibilities, or maybe they were intoxicated. But the truth is, the event to this day remains an enigma in our Torah. Unless, Chloe, you figured it out. I don't know. Strange fire is the phrase that kept emerging in my thoughts as I listened to Mark Zuckerberg, CEO of Facebook, speak before senators and congressional representatives in Washington this week. If you heard any of the clips, the headline, "Zuckerberg explains Facebook to confused senators," might feel apropos. For these leaders did not always seem to understand what Facebook is or how it works. And yet, they're not so unlike the rest of us humble Facebook users. One of the realities that emerged from the hearings was that Facebook and platforms like it is strange fire, essential to our lives, as animal sacrifice was to our ancient ancestors in biblical times, but nearly impossible to define. We utilize it, we live in it, we share with it, and we bask in it. But like the Israelites in our Torah portion, we don't really understand it. We've seen that Facebook and other apps and technologies can do great things. They can powerfully connect people to one another and to, if not a transcendent deity, then at least to transcendent ideas that can be shared all over the world. But they can also wreak havoc on our lives, personally and publicly. They're magnetic and they're dangerous. They are a necessity and they are confusing. They are inviting and they're treacherous. Strange fire. The Torah portion's strange fire incident perhaps can shed some light on us in this moment as we try to navigate these relatively uncharted waters. After the revealing incident that I mentioned, when these 2 young men are consumed by the fire, and those around them realize that this fire is, in fact, alien, strange, it's different, it's unpredictable, it's volatile, it's dangerous, their community takes several steps several actions that I think may sound familiar to us this week. There is a public outcry in the Torah. The Israelites mourn for the loss of life that they've witnessed, for the loss of innocence that they may be experiencing when something that they have trusted seems to turn on them. New rules are made to protect the people. Moses begins to regulate the way that people can approach the sanctuary and offer their sacrifices in light of what has happened to his nephews. Aaron, the high priest, is silent. His silence is most certainly related to the loss of his two sons right before his eyes in this incident, but perhaps also is related to the fact that the sacrificial system is his responsibility. And he believed he understood it, so much so that his children partook in it. And that illusion, of course, is shattered. And he pauses, and he's silent. We can see these things, I believe, happening in our world right now. A public outcry when our privacy is breached or when our technologies facilitate bullying or hate speech. New rules and regulations being developed to deal with our new realities. Leaders of these companies, we hope, reflecting upon their responsibilities and reevaluating their practices to create more protection for all of us. What we do not see in this Torah portion is how the community really moves forward from an interaction with strange fire. We sort of just move on after all of these steps are taken without a lot of explication about how people were feeling and what they did to deal with this turbulence. But there is another place in the Torah where we do see a next step. And it may provide a bit more comfort and guidance at this confusing moment. In the book of Genesis, Adam and Eve are instructed not to eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, but they do anyway. They can't help themselves. The tree is their strange fire. It draws them in, even as they know it's dangerous, it's risky to partake. And once they've touched it, God asks them this famous first question, Ayeka, where are you? And they answer, we are hiding. What follows is a drastic change in their lives. They must leave the sheltered Garden of Eden forever. And as sad as this change is, it is also the moment when awareness and free will enter the world in earnest. It is a growing moment for humanity, the defining moment of our existence, for we, like Adam and Eve, live outside the garden, and we must grapple with the confusing realities and the knowledge of good and evil inside every community, inside every family, inside every single human being. Adam and Eve become more themselves in the wake of this experience. And while their answer to God's question, Ayeka, is more complicated as their life goes on than it was before they ate from the tree, before they touched the fire, it is a more honest answer. It is not, we are hiding from you anymore. Their answer becomes instead, we are now searching. We are searching for something real and true and good and lasting amidst this confusion. And it is my hope that this can be our answer in this time as well. The moment we're in is so complex. Facebook and other social media platforms are a huge part of our lives. I would stake my life that more people in this chapel have heard of Facebook than have heard of Shmini. Right? Yeah, okay. It's a huge part of our lives, and that is as true for those who are the eldest in this sanctuary, to those who are Gen Xers and our Gen Yers and our baby boomers, as it is for our high school students and even younger. It is a part of everyone's existence. And yet, we also know that these entities, as much a part of our lives as they are, can suck the life out of us. Whether it is through harvesting our data so that we can be manipulated, or through overstimulating our senses so that we have trouble ever finding peace and space. And in the midst of these changes, each one of us, like Adam and Eve, is going to have to answer God's question, Ayeka, where are you? And I hope that our status update can read, I am not hiding from this complexity. I am not denying its existence. I am not oversimplifying it. I am searching. I am searching always for what is real, for what is true, for what is good, for what is lasting, today and forevermore. That's my prayer for us tonight. Can you hear Red Zone?